The truth that broke us. I was 16 the day everything changed. That was the day I told my father the truth about his wife, and he chose her over me. Growing up, my father was my hero. A strong man with kind eyes and a booming laugh. He was the type who made everyone feel safe when he was around. My mother died when I was only 5, and for a while, it was just the two of us. Then she came, Martha. At first, Martha seemed nice. She smiled too much, spoke softly, and brought me gifts I didn't ask for. But I was a child who missed her mother deeply. I was willing to accept anything that resembled care. I tried to like her. Really, I did. But over time, I started to notice things. Small things. How her smiles didn't reach her eyes. How she treated me differently when Dad wasn't home. How she looked at me like I was a burden she had to endure. And then came the punishments. Subtle, quiet, strategic. She never hit me. No. She was smarter than that. She'd throw away my homework and claim I misplaced it. She'd tell my father I was rude or disrespectful when I wasn't. And when I tried to defend myself, she'd twist my words in front of him so perfectly, it looked like I was lying. Dad would frown. "Why would she lie, Alex?" he'd say. "You need to respect your stepmother." I'd retreat into silence. By the time I turned 15, things had gotten worse. She'd lock the fridge, claiming I ate too much. If I got home late from school, due to extra classes, she'd lock the door and make me sleep on the porch. I'd wait till Dad returned from work to be let in, cold and shivering, and she'd tell him, "He left home this morning with an attitude. Maybe a night outside will help." And my father believed her. Every time. I began journaling everything. Dates. Times. What happened? I also began recording audio on my old phone when I could. I knew what I was experiencing was wrong, but no one would believe me, not even my father. Until one day, I had enough. It was the week before my final exams. I'd spent hours studying at a friend's house, and when I returned home, my textbooks were missing. I panicked. They weren't in my room. They weren't in the sitting room. I looked everywhere. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, those dusty books," Martha said from the kitchen. I thought they were trash. I burned them. I stood there frozen. Burned. My notes. My textbooks. I didn't say a word. I just walked to my room, closed the door, and cried. That night, I waited till my father returned from work. I met him outside before he entered. "I need to talk to you," I said, eyes red. He raised an eyebrow. "Now." "Yes, now." We sat in the car, and I pulled out my phone. I played him a few recordings, Martha calling me names, threatening to lie about me again, admitting to burning my books. Then I handed him the journal I'd kept for a year. My father sat still for a long time. "She said you were rude," he whispered. "She lied. She said you hit her once." I looked at him. Do I look like someone who would hit a woman? He looked down. That night, he didn't sleep. I could hear pacing. The next day, he didn't go to work. He stayed home, quiet and tense. I heard them argue in the room. Martha screamed, cried, accused me of forging everything, said I edited the audio. But I could hear the crack in her voice. She knew she was caught. And then, the next morning, he called me to the sitting room. "I think it's best if you leave." I blinked. "What?" "You've created division in this house. I need peace. You can stay with your aunt till things cool down." "You're sending me away?" He looked away. "You've always had problems with Martha. I can't have this continue." I stood there, stunned. "Even after the evidence, you still don't believe me." He rubbed his forehead. "It's not about belief. It's about peace. She's my wife. You're my son. But you're a man now. You can live with your aunt." A man. I was barely 16. I packed my things in silence. As I walked out, he didn't even hug me. He just said, "Call me when you settle." I stayed with my aunt, Clara, a strong-willed woman who had always suspected Martha wasn't as innocent as she seemed. She welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in years, I could breathe. My grades dropped slightly, but I still passed. I started healing. I went to therapy after my aunt insisted. I began speaking up more. I found my voice again. Months passed. My father barely called. When he did, it was short. "Are you okay?" he'd ask. "I'm fine." Then silence. I heard from neighbors that things at his house weren't the same. Martha had started drinking. She was bitter, angry all the time. But my father stuck with her. One day, my aunt asked, "Do you want to forgive him?" I shrugged. "I don't know. He chose her over me." She nodded. "But sometimes, forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you." I thought about it. And slowly, I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Years passed. I got into university. Studied psychology. I wanted to understand how people could ignore truth even when it stared them in the face. By my third year, I hadn't seen my father in over 5 years. Then one day, I got a call. "Alex." "It's me, Dad." My heart froze. "I'm in town. I'd like to see you." I agreed. We met at a cafe. He looked older, smaller. The man who once seemed like a giant was now a shadow of himself. "How have you been?" he asked. "Good," I replied. "How's Martha?" He hesitated. "Gone. She left 2 years ago. Took my savings. Cleared the house. Left a note." I said nothing. "I should have listened," he whispered. "I see it now. Everything you said. I'm so sorry, Alex." His eyes watered. "You were just a boy. And I failed you." I sipped my drink. "Yes, you did." He nodded, ashamed. "But I'm okay now," I added. "I forgave you, even when you didn't ask." He looked up, surprised. I didn't want to carry that bitterness forever. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "Can we try again? Build something new?" I looked at him. "I don't know, but we can start with this coffee." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it felt real. We sat there for almost 2 hours. He asked about school. I told him I was studying psychology. He chuckled quietly. "I should have guessed," he said. "Trying to understand broken people like me." I didn't laugh. Trying to understand why people ignore pain when it's right in front of them. He nodded. "I did that. I ignored yours." The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was honest. It felt like two people trying to talk through years of shattered glass. I saw the regret in his eyes. He wasn't the same man I'd grown up with. Life had humbled him. The arrogance, the stubbornness, it had melted away. I didn't know if it was because Martha left him or because guilt finally broke through. Either way, I could see he meant his apology. But forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process. Over the next few months, we kept in touch. Small steps. Occasional phone calls. Short visits. He came for my final year presentation at school. Sat in the back row. When I looked up and saw him clapping at the end, something inside me softened. He didn't try to force his way back. He gave me space. One Saturday, I invited him to my aunt's house. Clara raised her eyebrows when I told her. "She has to forgive him too," I said gently. Clara opened the door that day, arms folded, face blank. My father greeted her softly. "Clara," he said, "I don't know if I deserve to be here, but thank you for saving my son." For the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. She blinked fast, then said, "Come in." They didn't hug, but they sat in the same room, shared the same table, and that was enough. Over dinner, he admitted everything. How Martha manipulated him. How ashamed he was. How lonely life became after she left. How he often wondered if it was punishment for turning his back on his own blood. "Maybe," Clara said. "But sometimes pain teaches what peace hides." After I graduated, I got an internship at a counseling center. I met young boys with stepmothers like mine. Girls who were called liars by their parents. Teenagers thrown out for telling the truth. I listened to them. Held space for them. And I always told them one thing. You are not crazy for seeing what others refuse to see. And you are not wrong for telling the truth. They cried sometimes. And so did I. One boy, Joel, reminded me of myself. 15, sharp eyes, quiet voice. He said his stepmother hated him and his dad didn't believe him. Maybe I should just leave, Joel whispered. I placed my hand over his. You have every right to speak the truth. Even if they don't listen now, keep the truth close. It doesn't disappear. He nodded. One evening, my father called. I want to visit your mother's grave, he said. I was quiet. She died too young, he added. And I buried her memory too fast. I agreed to go with him. We drove in silence, holding flowers. When we reached the cemetery, he stood there, hands shaking. I told her I'd protect you, he whispered. And I broke that promise. I laid the flowers on the grave. My mother's name was still sharp on the marble. Lillian Hart, beloved wife and mother. I hope she forgives me, he said. She would've, I replied. But I think she'd want you to forgive yourself too. A year later, I opened my own therapy practice. It wasn't huge. Just a 2-room office with warm lighting and soft chairs. But it was mine. On the wall behind my desk, I hung a framed quote, "Truth isn't always loud, but it never dies." My father came for the opening. He stood near the door, quiet and proud. "You've done well," he said. "I had help," I replied, looking at Clara. Clara smiled. "You did the work. We just gave you space." As the guests left that night, my father lingered. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me a second chance." I nodded. "Just don't waste it." "I won't," he said. "Not again." Years passed. We never became the same father and son we once were, but we became something honest. Something whole. He never tried to erase the past, and I respected him for that. Every birthday he called. Every achievement he showed up. Quietly. Humbly. One day, he gave me an old box. "These were your mother's," he said. Inside were letters she'd written, some photos, and a small blue journal. One note inside read, "If anything happens to me, tell Alex to always speak the truth, even when it hurts. That's the only way he'll stay whole in a broken world." I closed the journal slowly. My hands trembled. My truth had cost me my home, my father, my comfort. But it gave me something better, my freedom, my strength, and eventually my healing. Time moved like a slow river after that night. My father, for all his efforts to rebuild, still carried the guilt like a second skin. I could see it in the way he always paused before knocking at my office, how he avoided taking up too much space in conversations, and how he sometimes looked at me like he was waiting for the punishment to finally fall. But I never gave him any. I had already lost too much to pain. I chose to heal. One Sunday afternoon, we sat under the mango tree in my aunt's backyard, the same tree that had shaded me through my darkest nights. "I still don't know why I let her win," my father said suddenly. "Even after seeing what she did, I still chose Martha." I looked at him for a long time. "You didn't choose her, Dad," I said. "You chose comfort. You chose denial." He looked down, ashamed. "I know," he murmured. "I chose wrong." I nodded slowly. "But you're choosing right now." That was the thing about broken people. Sometimes they only knew how to act when they were drowning. The healing came slowly, one truthful moment at a time. 2 years passed. I got married to a fellow therapist named Lillian. Yes, just like my mother. Kind, calm, fiercely intelligent. She reminded me daily of everything I thought I'd lost in my childhood. At our wedding, my father stood beside me as my best man. I still remember his trembling hands as he gave his speech. "Alex, you were the son I failed. But you became the man I always hoped to be. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I thank God every day that you gave it anyway." People clapped. I cried. Clara wept openly, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "You raised a fine man," someone whispered to her. Clara smiled. "No. He raised himself. I just kept the door open." Months later, my father fell ill. It started with fatigue, then hospital visits, then a diagnosis, stage 4 prostate cancer. The news shook me. Even after all we'd been through, I wasn't ready to lose him. We brought him to stay with us. Lillian helped nurse him, and my aunt visited often. Despite the pain, my father smiled more than ever. I don't deserve this peace, he whispered one night, as I helped him take his medication. You don't have to deserve it, I replied. You just have to accept it. He nodded. I'm proud of you, son. You've said that before, I smiled. I'll say it every day until my last breath, he said. Because I should have said it when you needed it most. 2 weeks before he died, he asked to visit my mother's grave again. We wheeled him to the same spot. He looked at her name, then took a deep breath. Lillian, he said softly, our boy became everything we dreamed. Strong, honest, better than I ever was. I knelt beside him. She would have been proud, I said. She is, he whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny box. What's that? I asked. Your mother's wedding ring, he said, placing it in my palm. I've kept it all these years. I want you to give it to your wife. I stared at the gold band, worn but full of meaning. She would have wanted it to stay in the family, he added. When he passed, he was at home, in his sleep, with a faint smile on his face. I held his hand until it turned cold. Lillian cried quietly beside me. We buried him beside my mother. And for the first time in years, I felt like something finally came full circle. Today, my therapy office has expanded. I have 2 new therapists working under me. My aunt still visits every Sunday with hot food and wise words. My wife is expecting our first child, a boy. I often sit by the nursery at night, watching the rocking chair sway. I wonder what kind of father I'll be. I don't want to be perfect. I want to be present, honest, listening. I want my child to know that truth is not a betrayal. It's a gift. Every so often, someone walks into my office, shaking, afraid, full of pain, and says the same thing. My father didn't believe me. My mother thought I was lying. They chose someone else over me. And I always reply, I know how that feels. But the truth, even when it breaks things, it also builds something stronger. Because I lived it. I survived it. And now, I help others do the same. Please, subscribe to African Tales by Helen Gold for more African stories. Comment, like, share, and turn on your notification bell. Thanks for always watching our story.